so we get a lot of money from the oil, but we also have a lot of fish, and Norwegians and Swedes and Danes and Finnish people are and Germans, Dutch people, British people are very clever workers, and there has been very little corruption for the last maybe 50, 60 years, but corruption is everywhere, but just on different levels. So when we're talking about the people in Africa being poor and that they need to take the kids off the plantations and send them to school, well, I think there are also too many educated people in many of those countries, many of those developing countries. And if they get a good education, like a doctor or a nurse, something like that, or even engineer, they will try to go abroad because the job opportunities are very limited, or the salaries are very limited. Now I live here now in the Philippines, and there's a lot of people here, a lot of young people, and so many of them have studied, they have nice university degrees, but they work as a cashier in the mall, they selling shoes or clothes or sunglasses, and then maybe they work in an eatery. So it has, here in the Philippines, it has been very hard in the last since the financial crisis back in 2008, actually, when so many jobs were closed overseas. So many Filipinos, especially Filipinas, they work as domestic helpers all over the world, and they are being, in many cases, they are being treated as slaves very badly. So the question is it worth it? The money I'm talking about, the cash. You need cash to buy a motorcycle. You need cash to buy a smartphone, a cool smartphone, right? But the surplus from the rich countries are flowing in over both Africa and Philippines and many other countries, where now you can get shoes. I got myself a pair of Italian leather shoes, very nice, but secondhand from the street vendors, and I paid something like $20 for those shoes. And in the shop, they would if they were new and you bought them in Europe, they would probably cost maybe $500, $400. You can go anywhere here and you can find shorts and jeans and shirts and all kind of clothes and shoes for almost next to nothing. And my impression is that Filipinos are basically quite happy about their lives. Even many of the people who live in very bad conditions in the cities, they come from the province and they can go back to the province. The problem is they don't make so much money in the province. But the question again is, how important are money in the long run? I asked a girl who worked in the shop in the village where I lived for quite a while, and I asked her, how much is your daily salary? And she said that she makes 100 pesos per day, and they are working from early morning until late afternoon, maybe until from 6 in the morning until 7 or 8 in the evening, 6 to 7 days a week. But I asked her, how long would it take for you? And she is a single mother, but her parents help her out. And I asked her, how long would you have to work before you could build your own house in this village? Get the land and build your own house. And she said, maybe 2 years. Now, of course, the house would be quite simple, but imagine you have your own house, your own property that is yours. You're not going to slave for 30 years for the bank. And this is the situation in many countries. So we are talking about where we consider people are poor. Even farmers, they say they are poor. No, they are not poor if they have cows, they have horses, they have land, if they have water, irrigation, if they can grow their own crops and they can build their own houses. They are not poor. Get it? So yes, there's a lot of injustice on a global scale. Of course, I can mention like Indonesia, for example, how Indonesia was about to open trade with Africa in the 1960s after they gained their independence. Indonesia is a great nation with a lot of natural resources, and those resources has traditionally been controlled by Holland, because it used to be a Dutch colony, and other Western powers. And America and Australia went in and did a lot of terrible things in Indonesia since it became an independent, so-called independent nation. And so the president that was there and was about to do a lot of trading directly between Indonesia and African nations, he was ousted by CIA. And Henry Kissinger is also one of the guys who have played a very big role in securing these rich guys back in the United States to secure them land and secure them rights to natural resources like mining and logging and all kind of stuff. So there are so many, and the Australians also had their pigs in the forest, as we would say in Norway. Um, they have many of these so-called rich nations have done a lot of bad things to the former colonial powers. France is still meddling a lot in Africa, but you must understand that it's not the normal person who is working 9 to 5 in Europe, in France or wherever, that benefits much from that one. It is those rich, still the very rich families that has been rich for centuries, that are still controlling the whole thing. So they have put many of these nations in debt traps. Another nation that is very eager to keep people in that trap or put them in the trap is China. So here in the Philippines, this nation was for hundreds of years it was a colony under Spain, but Spain didn't really get a lot of uh, cash out from this nation in the long run. And so the United States took over the Philippines in 1899 when Spain lost the war between the United States and Spain. There was a war. Okay? So of course, there was a lot of controversy about how the Americans acted, especially in the beginning when they came to the Philippines. But after a while, they started to act more civilized, and they actually gave the Philippines their independence in the late 1930s. But it didn't take a long time before the Japanese attacked and took over the Philippines. And so who helped to free the Filipinos from the Japanese? It was the Americans, right? And I don't think that the Americans are particularly taking advantage of the Philippines. One of the reasons that there are some very, very super rich people here in this country, and that so many people seem to struggle financially, is because of corruption and because of oligarchy. The same thing you can find in Thailand, you can find it in Russia, you can find it in Romania, you can find it so many places. So it is an illusion to think that white people, Europeans, Americans are rich. They used to be quite rich for the last 50, 60 years, but it's going downhill. So, and what is interesting about this Ghana president is that he went to Switzerland and he said that you have, and he said, thank you for, you sent missionaries here and you translated the Bible into two of the main languages in Ghana. And you made cocoa plantations. And and here in the Philippines also, I mean the Europeans and the colonial powers like the Spaniards, they brought a lot of stuff to the Philippines that the Filipinos are enjoying to this day. So there, but what I want to tell the people is that if you feel you are poor, but you are actually, you have your own house, even if it's a small house, but that is your house. Maybe you cannot pay the electricity, maybe you cannot pay the water bill every month, things like that, but still you have your own house. In Norway, if you don't pay your bills, they will come and take the house from you, and you will be put on welfare. You will lose your family, your kids, everything will be destroyed. So I think that most people, they want to have a good life, obviously. But you can have a good life if you have the basic needs covered. If you have family that loves you. The problem in Europe is that the concept of family is almost gone. People can, well, it's not only that they couldn't afford to have kids. Many people were very selfish, and they realized that if we're gonna have a good job, a good career, we have to postpone having a family, having kids. And many of the women in Europe, they don't give birth, either because they waited too long before they got married or before they entered into a relationship with a man where they could actually have children. Um, but also it was this imperative from the governments that, especially in Scandinavia, that both the man and the wife should go out and work, and so then the government would take care of the children. And so the children have been brainwashed in the school system. I know, I'm a teacher, that having children is some of the worst thing you can do. And so that's why they're teaching a lot about birth control in Norway. It's like, I have been teaching about birth control, but I told my students that it seems like they say it's the worst thing that can happen to you is to become pregnant. But who are we going to teach in the future if there are no kids? Who are the carpenters going to build houses for if there are no people? Who are they going to sell cars to if there are no people? You see? So this is the big issue in many parts of the Western world, is that they didn't make enough kids. And this is going to backfire big time on them. Who's going to pay their pensions? They say, oh, I have been paying my pension all my life. No, you paid the pension for your parents. That's what you did. Because when the pension plans came into existence in Europe, uh, it was something new, right? So there were no pension fund. So who's gonna pay into the funds? The workers, okay? And they would have to support their parents' generation. So all the pensions are basically depending upon the young generation who will pay into the pension. So there are so many things, so many misconceptions in countries that we call developing countries, where they think that the grass is so much greener. They go to Canada and they get a shock. They go to United States, they get a shock. They go to Europe, they get a shock. And the families back home, they are expecting them to get a good job and send a lot of money home to their family in those countries. But many of these workers, they are really struggling. They are working like slaves. They are suffering terribly. They live in very lousy conditions. So, and all of this is because of the love of money. Africa is an enormous continent. And even if you have the Sahara Desert, you have arid areas, it is still one of the greatest continents in the world, maybe the greatest continent with most opportunities. So that is why I like this president of Ghana, because he seems to be genuinely concerned about his population, to help his people. And he said the resources of the country is not owned by a particular group or by politicians, etc. It is owned by the people. So what he is eager to do is to tell the people in the Western world that it's enough. We will not give away all our natural resources for you to make money on them. We will try and start to develop our own industry. So good luck, Africa. Good luck, Philippines. But realize that you have the natural resources, and food is. I mean, without food, nobody can exist. Nobody can survive, right? So if you're living in an area where agriculture is possible and growing your food is possible, owning your own land is possible, and you actually have basically what you need. You have your family, you have children, you have parents, you have neighbors around who love you and respect you, then that is a very wealthy life you have, even if your bank account is nowhere to be found, even if you are basically living day by day, but still you have food on the table if you have a table, right? You have something to drink, you have something to dress up with, and we all need to be thankful for the real values in this world. And the real values, they are not found in smartphones and computers and all kind of expensive vehicles, right? Okay, I hope this was waking you up a little bit. God bless you, and see you next time.